The envelope was yellowed with age, its edges frayed as if it had been handled by desperate hands. Emma's name was scrawled across the front in jagged, uneven script, a handwriting she recognized instantly. Her grandmother's. The letter inside was brittle, the ink faded, but the words were unmistakable. "Les, come to Blackwood Manor at midnight. The staircase will show you the truth." Emma hadn't set foot in the mansion since she was a child. Her grandmother's sudden death had left the place abandoned, its halls shrouded in rumors of hauntings and disappearances. Yet curiosity gnawed at her. What staircase, what truth? Jake, ever the skeptic, laughed when she showed him the letter. Probably some old family secret, he joked, but his eyes betrayed his unease. Still, he insisted on coming along. "No way I'm letting you go alone to that creepy place," he said, flashing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. The mansion loomed against the moonlit sky, its Gothic spires casting long skeletal shadows. The front door groaned as Emma pushed it open, the scent of dust and decay flooding her senses. Jake flicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. "Cozy," he muttered. They barely stepped inside when the door slammed shut behind them with a force that shook the walls. Emma lunged for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The lock clicked, a sound too deliberate to be accidental. Jake's laughter died in his throat. "Okay," he whispered, "that's not good." Somewhere in the depths of the mansion, a clock began to chime. Midnight. The air grew heavy, and a low, grinding noise echoed through the grand hall. Emma's breath hitched as the floor trembled beneath them. Something was coming. The grand hall of the mansion loomed before Emma and Jake, its high ceilings swallowed by darkness. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of decay clung to every surface. As the clock struck midnight, a low rumble echoed through the room, and the floor trembled beneath their feet. Then, as if summoned by some unseen force, the staircase materialized in the center of the hall. Its wooden steps were warped and splintered, groaning under the slightest pressure, as though protesting their presence. Emma's breath hitched as she exchanged a nervous glance with Jake, his face pale in the flickering glow of their flashlights. They stepped onto the first stair, and a bone-chilling cold seeped into their bones. The temperature dropped with each step, their exhales forming ghostly clouds in the air. The flashlight sputtered, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. Emma's pulse quickened as she caught the faintest murmur of voices, whispers that seemed to come from every direction, yet from nowhere at all. The words were indistinct, but the desperation in them was unmistakable. Jake tightened his grip on her arm, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you hear that?" Emma nodded, her throat too dry to speak. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into a cacophony of sorrow and rage. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw it. A shadowy figure standing at the base of the staircase, its form shifting like smoke. The caretaker. His hollow eyes gleamed in the darkness, fixed on them with a hunger that made Emma's skin crawl. Jake turned to look, but the figure was gone. "We should keep moving," he said, though his voice wavered. Emma swallowed hard and nodded, forcing herself to climb higher. The whispers followed, growing more insistent, as if the very walls were alive and watching. The caretaker's presence lingered, unseen but palpable, a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The air had turned icy, each breath visible as Emma and Jake climbed the creaking staircase. The whispers grew louder, threading through the darkness like invisible hands. Emma tightened her grip on the flashlight, its beam flickering erratically. "This place is fucked up," Jake muttered, his voice shaky. Before Emma could respond, a gust of wind roared through the staircase, extinguishing their lights. In the blackness, Jake's scream pierced her ears, sharp, raw, then abruptly cut off. Emma's pulse hammered in her throat as she fumbled for her flashlight. When the light sputtered back to life, Jake was gone. The step where he'd stood seconds ago was empty, save for his flashlight lying abandoned, its lens smeared with a thick, tar-like substance. She reached for it, recoiling as the black ooze clung to her fingers, cold and pulsating. The walls groaned, pressing inward, narrowing the staircase with a slow, deliberate hunger. "Jake," she screamed, her voice swallowed by the dark. Silence answered. The whispers returned, slithering around her, murmuring words she couldn't decipher. Then, a new sound, a wet, ragged breathing just behind her. Emma whirled around, but there was nothing. Only the creeping sensation of being watched, of something moving just beyond the edge of the light. The staircase stretched infinitely above and below her, every shadow shifting with unseen malice. The realization coiled in her gut she was no longer alone. Beneath her feet, the wooden steps trembled, as if something far below was climbing toward her. Slowly, patiently. The black substance on Jake's flashlight began to spread, oozing into the grain of the wood. Emma's breath came in short, panicked gasps. The walls were closer now, so close she could feel their cold press against her shoulders. Whatever was coming for her, it was getting nearer. And there was nowhere left to run. Emma's breath came in ragged gasps as she pushed open the attic door, the hinges groaning in protest. The air was thick with dust, and the faint scent of decay clung to every surface. Moonlight seeped through a cracked window, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. In the corner, an ancient wooden chest sat beneath a layer of grime, its lid slightly ajar. Her grandmother's diary. She knelt, her fingers trembling as she pried open the chest. The diary's leather cover was brittle, the pages yellowed with age. As she flipped through them, her grandmother's elegant handwriting told a story of horror. The mansion wasn't just a house, it was a prison. The hidden staircase was a gateway, a passage for lost souls trapped between worlds. The caretaker, a spectral guardian, ensured none escaped, feeding on their despair. Emma's grandmother had discovered the truth too late. She'd tried to seal the staircase, but the ritual had failed, and the caretaker had claimed her instead. Now, the diary's final entry was a warning: the stairs hunger. They will take you too. As Emma read, the whispers returned, louder now, slithering into her mind. Shadows shifted around her, forming faint, gaunt faces, the trapped souls. Their voices overlapped, pleading, demanding, stay with us, join us. You belong here. Her skin prickled as cold fingers brushed her shoulders, though no one stood behind her. A floorboard creaked. Emma spun, heart pounding. The diary slipped from her hands, falling open to a page she hadn't seen before. A single sentence, scrawled in blood, red inky: the caretaker always collects his due. The attic door slammed shut. Emma's breath came in ragged gasps as the caretaker emerged from the shadows of the attic, his presence sucking the warmth from the air. His hollow eyes locked onto hers, and when he spoke, his voice was a whisper that slithered into her ears like a serpent. You have a choice, Emma, he murmured, his skeletal fingers twitching. Give me Jake, and you may leave this place untouched. Refuse, and you will join the others, forever. The words hung in the air, heavy with malice. Emma's hands trembled as she clutched her grandmother's diary tighter, the pages rustling like dead leaves. Her stomach twisted at the thought of sacrificing Jake, her oldest friend, to this monstrous being. No, she spat, her voice steadier than she felt. I won't betray him. The caretaker's grin stretched impossibly wide, splitting his gaunt face like a crack in porcelain. A shame, he hissed. Then, with a sound like breaking bones, his body began to twist and contort. His limbs elongated, his torso splitting open to reveal writhing, shadowy tendrils. Faces pressed against his skin from within, their mouths open in silent screams. The lost souls he had consumed. Emma staggered back, bile rising in her throat as the caretaker advanced, his movements unnaturally fluid. The attic walls seemed to pulse around her, the very air thickening with the weight of the dead. She could hear them now. The whispers of the trapped, their voices overlapping in a chorus of despair. Join us, they begged. Stay with us. The caretaker's hand, now more like a claw, reached for her, his fingers brushing her arm. The touch was freezing, leeching the strength from her muscles. Emma screamed, wrenching herself away just as the floorboards beneath her groaned in warning. She had to run, before the attic, the mansion, and the caretaker's hunger claimed her too. Emma's breath came in ragged gasps as she sprinted down the staircase, her footsteps echoing against the wooden steps that seemed to stretch on forever. The walls around her pulsed grotesquely, veins of black tendrils snaking across the peeling wallpaper, throbbing as if alive. The whispers she had heard earlier now swelled into a cacophony of voices, taunting her, repeating her name in a chorus of hollow echoes. Emma, Emma, you can't escape. Her flashlight flickered wildly, casting jagged shadows that twisted into grotesque shapes. The air grew thick with the scent of decay, and the temperature plummeted, her exhales forming icy clouds. Just as she thought she might collapse from exhaustion, something caught her eye. A glint of light reflecting off glass. She skidded to a halt, her heart seizing as she recognized Jake's face staring back at her from within an ornate, dust-covered mirror. His eyes were wide with terror, his mouth open in a soundless scream. One hand pressed desperately against the glass, as if he could push his way through. Behind him shadows writhed, their clawed fingers raking across his shoulders. Help me, his voice was muffled, barely audible over the whispers. Emma reached out, but the moment her fingers touched the mirror's surface, it rippled like water, cold and unnatural. A guttural laugh echoed from above, the caretaker. His voice slithered down the stairs, dripping with amusement. Running only delays the inevitable, he crooned. The staircase trembled violently, steps cracking and splintering beneath her feet. Emma screamed as the wood gave way, sending her stumbling forward. The mirror shattered, and Jake's reflection fractured into 1,000 pieces, his final scream swallowed by the dark. The caretaker's laughter swelled, drowning out all else as the staircase collapsed into the abyss below. Emma's breath came in ragged gasps as she stumbled to the bottom of the staircase, her legs trembling from exhaustion and fear. The grand hall of the mansion was eerily silent now, the whispers of the lost souls fading into the background. But her relief was short-lived. The front door, their only hope of escape, was sealed shut, its wood warped and fused as if it had never been an exit at all. A cold dread settled in her chest as the caretaker materialized before her, his hollow eyes boring into hers. His voice, a grating whisper, slithered into her ears. "You cannot leave, Emma. The house has chosen you. Join me, or perish like the others." Her hands shook as she clutched her grandmother's diary, the pages fluttering open to the ritual she had barely dared to hope would work. The words were written in a shaky hand, the ink faded but legible. Emma's voice trembled as she began to recite the incantation, her words echoing through the hall. The air grew thick, the walls trembling as if the mansion itself was resisting. The caretaker let out a guttural scream, his form twisting and contorting, limbs stretching unnaturally as he lunged for her. Just as his skeletal fingers grazed her throat, a blinding light erupted from the diary. The souls trapped within the staircase wailed, their voices merging into a chorus of liberation. The mansion shuddered violently, cracks splitting the walls as the curse unraveled. The caretaker's screams dissolved into the chaos, his form disintegrating into smoke. Emma collapsed to her knees as the front door burst open, dawn's first light spilling into the ruinous hall. As the dust settled, Emma's eyes were drawn to a shattered mirror on the floor. In its broken shards, Jake's reflection appeared, his face no longer twisted in terror but serene, almost peaceful. He smiled at her, a silent thank you, before the light engulfed him, and he vanished. The mansion groaned one last time, its walls collapsing inward, as if the earth itself was reclaiming the cursed ground. Emma barely managed to scramble outside before the entire structure imploded, leaving nothing but rubble, and the faintest echo of whispered goodbyes.